I want to hear what you think is the best movie adaptation of all time. Do you think it's a classic like To Kill a Mockingbird? A movie like Fight Club where even the author of the book likes the movie better? Maybe it's The Shining, or 300, or the Super Mario Brothers movie, just kidding. I think the best adaptation is The Mask. If you didn't know, Jim Carrey's The Mask movie is actually based off of a series of comics. And the comics are seriously one of the most unhinged things I've ever read in my life. And once you read all of the comics, you see that this is probably one of the best and maybe one of the most successful adaptations of all time. Because with a lot of movie adaptations, people liked the original. And sometimes they even like the source material better. Typically when you have a great adaptation, the goal is to be as good as the source material. But The Mask movie is far better than the comics, because the comics were one of the most unhinged things I've ever read in my life. The original pitch for the Mask comic was Tex Avery, who created things like Looney Tunes, meets the Terminator. So it was supposed to have over-the-top silliness with an immortal character. And where the movie leans way more into the Looney Tunes and Tex Avery aspect, the comics are far more on the Terminator side. And one massive difference being who is the main character in the series. In the movie, Jim Carrey's character, Stanley Ipkiss, is the main character, and it's more about Stanley Ipkiss than it is about the Mask or any other character. But this is not the case in the comics. The comics don't center around a human character, they center around the Mask. Because throughout the different comics, different people put on the mask, and then you follow them on their bizarre journeys. But you will notice some overlap with the characters, like Stanley Ipkiss is in the first comic, and that's who stars in the film. But whereas in the movie Stanley is a likable guy, in the comic book that's not the case at all. He's mostly unlikable, and it gets worse the longer he wears the mask. Because the more you wear the mask, the more unhinged you get and the more addicted to it you get in the comics. But in the first comic we see Stanley put on the mask, and he essentially goes on a killing spree, getting revenge on people who have wronged him, and then eventually the cops for trying to stop him. And we do see some overlap with the movies, how his first target is a gang that's harassing him. There's also familiar scenes like when he takes the balloon animals and then turns one into a Tommy gun. But in the movie, this is played off as a very silly thing and he never ends up hurting anybody with the weapon he makes. He does this exact same thing in one of the comics, except he then sprays people down with it. And also, this isn't Stanley Ipkiss, but we'll get to that in a minute. We also have the mechanics that rip him off. In the movie we see them being taken out with mufflers in their rear ends. But in the comic he brutally takes their lives, highlighting just how gruesome this comic really is. And Stanley in The Mask becomes a horrible person in the comics, and at one point he actually goes back to his middle school and finds his teacher who was rude to him and takes her life in front of a classroom full of children. And while in the comic as well as the movie you're immortal while you're wearing the